It seems like I spent the entirety of last month reading and working, and I did. And how much reading did I actually get done? Not that much, as it turns out. But I did finish reading 5 books, and 3 of them were either on my phone or on Audible. But I do have 2 of them right here. And all 5 of them were pretty damn good. So I'm going to just launch right into book number 1. So book number 1 was In Search of Being by George Ivanovich Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff, whatever. I do not recommend this one, even though I definitely enjoyed it. A lot of just weird, far out stuff in this book. And it's like, I'm very sort of practical, and like when I talk about sort of like more, I guess you could say, spiritual topics, my voice doesn't get all weird. I'm not all pretentious about it. I enjoy reading it. I think a lot of it has a lot of like truth in it, and it's definitely worth reading. That being said, it's just all these things about like centers, and basically, I mean, he believes that like astrology is a thing. It's not a thing. And just all this stuff. But at the very same time, the book is about, becoming more intensely alive, like activating your full personal, like, inner energies, which I definitely, agree with in like a totally secular way. Like, people are not, like, I think of people as like a giant, like a jet airplane flying on just like one engine. We actually have more engines, but we don't turn them on. Like, we sort of go around sort of lazily through life, not really living as fully and intensely as we possibly can. And this book was a sort of an antidote to that. So definitely worth reading. And the next book is so down to earth. It is Never Finished by David Goggins. I loved so I loved this one for sure, but I also loved his first one, Can't Hurt Me. I did an entire book breakdown of that book for the Stairway to Wisdom, and it's down below. You can read that. There's a link in the description. And actually, there's a book about Gurdjieff as well, called The War Against Sleep by Colin Wilson. And I also did another breakdown of that for the Stairway to Wisdom. It's like this, like all the key ideas and everything about those books. They're definitely worth checking out. But Can't Hurt Me was like amazing. Sold like how many millions of copies by now? Like, I talk about it all the time. I hear it everywhere. I see it everywhere. And when I heard David Goggins saying that this book would be even better than that first one, I'm not I wasn't sure whether he could live up to that. He lived up to this. It was really, really good. And what I recommend doing is listening to the audiobook version because they did something really cool. And that was after every chapter, the narrator, I forget the narrator's name, but he would basically do like a sit-down podcast episode with Goggins after each chapter. So he finished reading and they talk about what they just read. And he even has his mother in chapter 9, I believe, do an episode with them as well. And that was like one of the most powerful chapters in the entire book. It's just like a I don't want to say a wonderful interview because it's not. It's like, it's damn near depressing in parts, but it's so important. It's an important interview, and it's definitely worth listening to. So yes, definitely read Can't Hurt Me. I loved that book. I will recommend it till the end of time. And once you finish that, finish Never Finished, because it is so good. It's wonderful. Book number 3 I really enjoyed as well. Again, I read that on my phone as well. It was really just the last 2 books here that I read the physical versions of. But it was Michelangelo, A Life in 6 Masterpieces by Miles J. Unger. And obviously it's a biography of Michelangelo. It is phenomenal. And basically, I mean, it's like the title says, so it goes sort of chronologically through 6 of his masterpieces. I forget which one it starts with, the Bacchus, or it doesn't start with David, but David's like 3rd, and then it goes to like the Sistine Chapel, and basically what's going on in his life as he's creating these masterpieces. I think the Pieta was number 2. I forget the exact chronology, but it was just an amazingly well done biography. And the author, Miles Unger, he knows a ton about architecture and the Renaissance and everything like that. And I'm not like super up to date in all my in my Florentine history or papal history in like the 16th, 17th centuries, but he is. And if you like that stuff, you'll definitely like this book. And some of the pictures too, like I never stopped to really appreciate some of Michelangelo's work. Like obviously I knew that David was like, I've seen, like I know what it looks like, I'd be able to pick it out. If somebody showed me the Sistine Chapel, I'd be like, hey, that's the Sistine Chapel. But have you ever seen the thing? It is gorgeous. It is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, laid eyes on. And he did it with his hands, and it's just, well, his paintbrush or whatever, but it's just stunning, staggering what he was able to do as like a person. Like the level of artistic mastery that he was able to develop in one single human lifetime. Yes, he had help. He had a whole workshop of people helping him out, but it was just wild. And that book is that story. And then book number 4, I really enjoyed this one as well, and I didn't think I'd like it as much as I would, or as I did. It is Dracula, Bram Stoker, and I love this book so much, and especially, I mean, if you can see this, like the book, or like the physical copy that I read, got like the cold things and like the little bookmark ribbon thing. I like, look at that. It's great. I love just the feel of this book in my hands. I feel like a 4th grader doing a book report on a book they haven't read. And it's like, yeah, this is a good book. It's heavy and it's got pages. It's gold. But I did actually read it and I loved it. It's the story, Dracula, but it's actually told all in letters and memos and just told from the perspectives of all these different characters writing letters to each other, and and you get a full picture of what's going on, and it's actually exciting as hell. Especially, I mean, the climax of the whole story at the end, how they sort of catch up to Dracula and what happens like at his castle when they sort of drive him out of London, and man, I won't ruin it for you, but it's like an amazing book, and came out in like 1898, I think. And one sort of like quick anecdote about this one. So they one of the characters in the beginning of the book, she gets like 3 blood transfusions from 3 different people, because Dracula has taken all her blood, whatever. And I got to thinking, like, did they know about blood types when he wrote this book? Like, does Bram Stoker know that maybe that's not like such a good idea? It's just like 3 random people. Just like, what are the odds that they don't all have the same proper blood type? Well, I found out via Google that they first discovered blood types in like 1900. And so basically it was years after this book came out that they discovered that people with different blood types might have different reactions. So it doesn't take away from the story, but it's just cool to think about. If you can get a book, like a version like this, like a physical version that looks and feels like this, I recommend it. And even if you can't, it's just like a classic. I definitely must read. And then the final book that I read in January was this one, The Art of Self-Improvement. This is another one that's worth reading, although I found like maybe a couple minor flaws with it, but it's definitely a great book. And just like it says in the subtitle, it covers 10 timeless truths of self-improvement. People, like the recurring themes, like people have done, or like the main focus of people's efforts over time to improve themselves. So you've got things like simplicity and perseverance and things of that nature. Humility is a big one. I found that she was sort of unfair to a couple authors. Mark Manson, for one. She mentions in passing The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, which I thought was a pretty damn good book, but she sort of like dismisses it with like a sentence. And it's just like the kind of like thing that makes you believe that she didn't actually read it. And she does the same thing for 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. She sort of like dismisses it as sort of like lesser than, and doesn't give it its full due. And again, that's not a perfect book either. And I thought his follow-up book to that, Beyond Order, was garbage. It was terrible. But 12 Rules for Life is a fantastic book, I thought. And I mean, I listened to him read it once, and I read it myself 4 times. So I've read or listened to it 5 times. And I think, I mean, it wasn't a waste of time. And for her to just sort of dismiss it in like a sentence. But this isn't about his book, this is about her book. And it's absolutely worth reading. And she does like a really, really good job of doing like a complete overview of everybody's sort of like contributions, like all the main contributions and the different areas of thought throughout time having to do with self-improvement. So you got people, saying that we should go back to how we were, 10,000 years ago. We should improve ourselves that way. And then you've got another strain of thought that says we should be more like machines or more like animals. And you've got like all these people saying like we should be more like this animal. And developments like, nowadays there's a much bigger focus on individuality and to sort of being your own person and sort of your own personal destiny, and sort of this sort of the self is bigger than the improvement part. It's like all about strengthening your ego, right? Whereas before, any self-help books would be sort of more other focused. and sort of building up the community of which you're a part, and how those sort of currents and attitudes have changed over time. It's a really, really good book. I definitely highly recommend it, and it was just like a random bookstore find. I think in December, I was buying Christmas gifts for people, and I made the mistake of going to the bookstore. I bought one book for someone else, and I bought like 12 for me, and this was one of them. But I regret nothing. Now, if you agree with Schaffner that the whole trend in self-improvement now is more sort of fixated on the self, then you might love this video right here. It's called The Culture of Narcissism is Ruining Your Life. It's about a book, an excellent book by Will Storr. You'll find out all about that book in that video, and I'll see you here next time for more books. And hey, happy reading.
To do something great, sacrifice is a part of it. It's just the start of it. You can't start then quit. You have to harness this, cause energy is bliss. And when I swing, I miss, but then I swing and hit. So I'ma swing again and I'ma swing again.